I rented my spare room to a wanted murderer for cash, and I didn't know until he stole my car and vanished. The first red flag wasn't the way he never showered, or the mountains of greasy Pizza Hut boxes that grew in the corner of our kitchen. It wasn't even the late-night rants about wanting to kill cops. The first real red flag was the butter, and by the time I realized what it meant, it was far, far too late. It was 2020. The world was shutting down, and at 15, so was mine. My mom had kicked me out the year before, and I was crammed into a dingy two-bedroom apartment with my older brother Leo. The paint on the walls was peeling like sunburnt skin, and the fluorescent light in the kitchen hummed a constant, depressing tune. My charter school had bailed on an online option, leaving me with nothing to do, and the cafe where I worked had let me go. Leo was the only one bringing in money, and we were barely keeping our heads above water. Every month was a terrifying tightrope walk over a pit of eviction notices. Then came Aaron. Leo met him at a bonfire party, one of those rare moments of normalcy in a world gone mad. Aaron was a ghost, a guy with no ties, a duffel bag, and a wad of cash. He needed a place to stay, cheap and fast, no questions asked. He promised to pay his share every month, in cash, on the 1st. For us, it was like a prayer answered by a devil we hadn't met yet. So, it was settled. 2 days later, his smell settled into our spare room. Don't get me wrong, Aaron was weird from the second he walked through the door. He was in his late 20s, with greasy, stringy hair and eyes that never seemed to focus on you, always darting to the corners of the room as if expecting an attack. He was intensely possessive of his things. His bedroom door was always locked, and he carried his worn-out duffel bag with him even when he went to the bathroom. And the rants. They'd start out of nowhere. We'd be watching some mindless show on TV, and he'd suddenly launch into a tirade. Aaron said, "You see that? See that cop? They're all pigs. Every single one of them. They deserve to be lined up and shot. I'd do it myself, you know. I really would." Leo and I would just exchange nervous glances over his head and try to change the subject. But the Pizza Hut was the strangest part. He ordered it constantly, sometimes twice a day. The delivery guy knew our apartment number by heart. Piles of greasy cardboard boxes became a permanent fixture in our tiny living space. But he always paid his rent on time, in crisp $20 bills. That cash was the sound of the eviction wolves staying away from our door, so we ignored the weirdness. We told ourselves it was a small price to pay for a roof over my head. One Tuesday morning, the weirdness turned violent. I shuffled into the kitchen to make some toast, my stomach rumbling. I opened the fridge, the cool air, a welcome relief in the stuffy apartment, and pulled out the tub of butter. Before I could even turn around, I felt a sharp, hard impact on the back of my head. Pain exploded behind my eyes, and I stumbled forward, my ears ringing. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. Aaron stood there, his face twisted into a mask of pure rage, his eyes wild. Aaron yelled, "That's my fucking butter!" His voice was a raw, guttural sound that didn't seem human. I was so stunned I just dropped the butter onto the table. I stammered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Before I could finish, his hand flew out and he backhanded me across the face. The crack echoed in the small kitchen. My head snapped to the side and the room tilted, stars popping in my vision. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. He was a grown man, and I was a 15-year-old girl. He stood over me, his chest heaving, and launched into a venomous rant. Aaron screamed, "You're always eating my food. You don't contribute a damn thing. You think you can just live here for free, touching my stuff? You're a useless freeloader." Tears streamed down my face, mixing with the blood from my lip. I was too terrified to move, too shocked to speak. I just stood there, trembling, as his verbal assault washed over me for what felt like an eternity. After 20 minutes, the rage seemed to drain out of him as quickly as it had appeared. His shoulders slumped, and his breathing slowed. He picked up the tub of butter from the table and held it out to me. Aaron said softly, "Here. I'm sorry. I get angry sometimes." The sudden switch was more terrifying than the shouting. I didn't take the butter. I just backed away slowly and fled to my room, locking the door behind me. As soon as I heard Leo's key in the lock that evening, I burst out and told him everything, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. His face darkened. Leo said grimly, "I'll handle it. Lock your door tonight." The next week was thick with a tension you could cut with a knife. We were all sitting in the living room, the TV on but nobody watching. The silence was heavy and suffocating. Then, out of the blue, Aaron turned his head slowly to look at Leo. Aaron said, his voice eerily calm, You know, Leo, I thought about shooting you the other day. When you came in my room and told me I had to be nicer to your sister, I was thinking about it the whole time you were talking. My blood ran cold. I stared at him, my breath caught in my throat. Aaron continued, a strange, proud smile on his face. Then you left, and I had time to think about it, and I didn't do it. I'm so proud of myself for that. Leo, trying to keep his voice steady, asked him the question that was screaming in my mind. Leo asked, "Do you even have a gun, Aaron?" Aaron's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. Aaron responded, "I might, but that's none of your business, is it?" After that, everything changed. We weren't just living with a weirdo, we were living with a ticking time bomb. Leo and I started looking for ways to get him out, but we were broke. Kicking him out meant we'd be out on the street within a month. We felt trapped, hostages in our own home. We distanced ourselves completely. We spoke to him only when absolutely necessary. It was like having a ghost in the house, a dangerous, unpredictable phantom who paid rent. Then came the meth binge. It was a Saturday night. We heard screaming and crashing from his room, followed by the sound of shattering glass. We ran out to see his bedroom window completely broken. Peering down, we saw him lying on the patchy grass 2 stories below, groaning. He just jumped. Leo yelled down, "Aaron, are you okay? I'm calling 911. Aaron scrambled to his feet, clutching his arm. He shrieked up at us, "No, no cops! Don't you dare call 911, I'm fine." He begged us not to call, pleaded with a wild desperation in his eyes. He said he'd just pay for the window. He didn't go to the hospital. He just limped back upstairs, and we pretended it never happened. But we knew then that we had to get him out, no matter the cost. We were trying to scrape together enough money to survive 1 month without his rent when the final act began. Over the summer, I had managed to save up $700 and bought an old, beat-up sedan, a total shitbox. But it was mine. It was my ticket to freedom, my symbol of hope. Because I was only 15, it was in Leo's name, but it was my car. One afternoon, Aaron found me in the kitchen. He looked worse than usual, sweaty, twitchy, his eyes wide. Aaron asked, "Hey, can I borrow your car? I'll give you $15, just for a few hours. I need to go pick something up." Money was tighter than ever. $15 was half a bag of groceries. My gut screamed no. Every instinct in my body told me it was a mistake, but I saw the desperation in my own situation reflected in that pathetic offer. I replied reluctantly, "Okay, just for a few hours, Aaron. I need it back tonight." He handed me a crumpled 10 and 5, snatched the keys from my hand, and was gone. I wish I had never done that. Hours ticked by. 6, 8, 10. The sun went down and the apartment felt darker and emptier than ever. I started to get worried. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I called his phone. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. My panic started to rise. I said to Leo, "He's not answering." "Leo, my learner's permit was in the glove box, my only ID." Leo tried to be reassuring, but his eyes were worried too. Leo replied, "He'll turn up, Maya. He's probably just flaked out somewhere. You know how he is." But he didn't turn up. A day went by. Then 2. A week passed. I gave up all hope of ever seeing my car again. My $700 symbol of freedom was gone, stolen for the price of a few pizzas. I was absolutely crushed. The loss felt so much bigger than just a car. It felt like the universe was telling me I'd never escape. Then, a week after Aaron disappeared, Leo's phone rang. The caller ID was an unknown number from a different area code. He put it on speaker. A man's voice, official and serious, said, "Am I speaking with Leo last name?" Leo confirmed, "Yes, this is him." The voice continued, "Sir, this is Sergeant Miller with the South Carolina State Police. We've recovered a vehicle registered in your name, a 1998 Honda Accord." My heart leaped into my throat. Leo asked, "You found it? Is it okay? Where is it?" Sergeant Miller replied, "Well, sir, the vehicle was involved in a high-speed pursuit and has been impounded here in Charleston County. All 4 tires are blown out, and there's considerable damage to the undercarriage. I'm afraid it's not drivable. My dream was not just gone, it was wrecked." But the officer wasn't finished. Sergeant Miller said, "The driver, a Mr. Aaron Peterson, was apprehended. Sir, I need to ask, did you give this man permission to drive your vehicle across state lines?" Leo explained, "He was our roommate. He borrowed it and never came back." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sergeant Miller's voice lowered slightly. Well, that explains a few things. Mr. Peterson was initially pulled over for a broken taillight. When our officer ran his name, it came back with a priority 1 felony warrant out of Florida. That's when he fled. Leo and I looked at each other, our eyes wide with confusion and fear. Florida? We were in Pennsylvania. South Carolina was 9 hours away. Leo asked, his voice trembling, "A warrant? What was the warrant for?" The sergeant's next words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs and making the entire world spin off its axis. Sergeant Miller said, "The warrant was for first-degree murder, sir. A year ago, Mr. Peterson allegedly shot his own cousin in the head over a dice game and a girl. He fled Florida shortly after and has been on the run ever since. He was making his way south again when we picked him up. He's being extradited back to Florida to stand trial." The phone call ended. Leo and I just stood in the silence of our crappy living room, the space where that man had eaten, slept, and ranted. The man who had hit me over a tub of butter, the man who had calmly told my brother he'd thought about shooting him. He hadn't just been weird. He hadn't just been an addict or a loser. He was a killer. We had been living with a murderer, sleeping just feet away from him. For months, every strange habit, every possessive tic, every violent outburst clicked into place. We hadn't been living with a roommate. We had been living with a monster who was hiding in plain sight. In case you're wondering, I never saw my car again. It was evidence in a multi-state felony case, and by the time they released it, the impound fees were more than the car was ever worth. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I think about that. And I realize I got off cheap. I only lost a car. I could have lost my life.